The Concord model is a proven method that can help fire departments and individual firefighters reduce exposure to harmful contaminants known to cause health problems in the fire service. The methods utilized in the Concord model are based on current scientific research and practical experience, along with other existing models. The prevention of contamination to firefighters does not have to be complicated or costly. Before an alarm comes in, all equipment and gear should be clean and ready for use after being properly decontaminated from previous incidents. All vehicle cabs and interiors should be maintained as clean and relatively free of harmful contaminants and residue from previous firefighting activities. Once on scene, proper placement of apparatus and equipment around the operating area is critical in limiting the amount of contaminants these vehicles are exposed to. Other fire ground operations such as command post, firefighter rehabilitation, and medical monitoring should also be placed out of the path of smoke and other contaminants. All windows, doors, and compartments of fire apparatus and support vehicles should be closed to prevent contamination of interiors and gear stored inside. During initial scene size-up and operations, all on-site command, safety, and support personnel should be equipped with proper personal protective equipment. These include adequate respiratory and skin protection in the form of respirator masks and appropriate close-fitting clothing. In close proximity of the fire, proper protective equipment such as self-contained breathing apparatus and bunker gear should be worn at all times. All exterior firefighting activities, both offensive and defensive, should be treated with the same caution and seriousness as interior fire, attack, and rescue. Even personnel who are in limited or temporary contact with the fire scene should wear appropriate respiratory and skin protection. These duties include command officers, engineers, and safety officers on the fire ground. It is important to select proper respiratory protection based on the hazards present in the atmosphere. Even if an IDLH atmosphere is not present, it is important to wear filtration masks that will be compatible with the contaminants present. After the fire is out, all personnel involved in follow-up activities, such as salvage, overhaul, and fire scene investigations, should have access to appropriate respiratory gear and clothing that will protect them from skin exposure. Upon completion of these post-fire activities, any tools and equipment utilized should be bagged and isolated until they can be properly cleaned. Following the extinguishment of the fire, performing a comprehensive field decontamination of all gear and protective clothing will aid in preventing exposure to harmful contaminants and residue. By having a small water hose with an appropriate adapter available, it is possible to safely and quickly clean up without the need of deploying larger hoses or booster lines. Wetting down the contaminated gear and protective clothing as soon as possible will help reduce airborne particulate matter and make decontamination safer and more efficient. Once gear and protective clothing have been wet deconned, respiratory protection may be discontinued if deemed appropriate. Simple cleaning supplies such as detergent, brushes, and body wipes kept in a bucket on the apparatus will remove the largest part of residue and contaminants firefighters come in contact with. During the on-scene decontamination process, all personnel involved should wear appropriate skin and respiratory protection. Be sure to thoroughly scrub all exposed clothing and equipment with detergent and a brush, finally rinsing with the small water hose. By bagging and sealing up all contaminated gear and accessories, even after gross field decontamination is performed, gear can be transported in a clean cab environment of the vehicle, while being prepared for a secondary deployment if necessary on the return trip to the station. On-scene decontamination of the skin is accomplished with wet towelettes and wipes. It is important to clean all exposed skin, especially around the neck and face. Once a wipe is heavily soiled, throw it away and use additional wipes to prevent spreading contaminants around the body. By placing a protective barrier over the contaminated uniform and skin that was under the turnout gear, firefighters can temporarily contain the contaminants to prevent further cross-contamination of other equipment and personnel. This method of secondary encapsulation can be as simple as an extra set of coveralls kept on the truck. Also, it is important to have an additional set of footwear available to prevent tracking contaminants around with dirty boots. Systematically decontaminating and processing all equipment and gear on scene will go a long way in making sure apparatus interiors are kept clean and firefighters are protected. All contaminated tools and hoses should be taken out of service until they can be properly cleaned and decontaminated. Cleaned hose should be stored neatly, ready for return to service. The interior of the fire apparatus should be wiped down and sanitized upon return to the station to reduce any cross-contamination. Encapsulated, contaminated gear and clothing can be easily moved without contaminating either the station or other work areas. The personnel conducting the processing of contaminated gear should be wearing proper safety equipment to prevent unnecessary secondary contamination of the gear. Processing and cleaning of all contaminated clothing and gear should happen in a separate work area away from regular laundry and other activities. The room should be properly sealed to prevent the escape of contaminated air and particulate matter into other parts of the station. All turnout gear, including coats, pants, helmets, and gloves, should be disassembled and processed in a controlled environment. Gloves, boots, hoods, and helmets should be thoroughly cleaned. It is also important to give special attention to helmet liners, sweatbands, and helmet suspension parts during the cleaning process. From time to time, it is necessary to completely disassemble helmets for a thorough cleaning. Additional tools and gear, such as SCBA packs and tanks, should also be washed. In addition to washing gear and equipment, it is also critical for firefighters to shower thoroughly as soon as possible after being in a hazardous environment, preferably within an hour. After showering, a clean uniform should be worn. The proper extractor-style washing machine should be used to keep the bunker gear laundering process both quick and gentle. Drying cabinets will make sure clothing maintains its fit and longevity. While the contaminated liners and shells are being laundered, a second set of clean gear can be used if the need arises. All clean gear is returned to the proper storage areas, away from exposure to diesel exhaust and other station contaminants, ready for the next call or alarm. Some gear may be severely damaged or soiled to the point that it cannot be serviced at the station. Advanced, specialized cleaning and repair should be handled by trained, certified professionals who handle all aspects of gear care and testing. All moisture barriers, regardless of age, receive hydrostatic water pressure testing. In compliance with the current edition of NFPA 1851, a minimum of 6 areas, 3 areas involving a seam and 3 material areas, are pressurized for 15 seconds with 1 psi of water. A circle identifying the test area is traced onto the fabric along with the test date and indication of any necessary repairs. These testing services provide customers with a detailed quotation for consideration. The Concord model. Simply changing firefighting behaviors and using a little bit of planning will reduce or eliminate most of the known carcinogenic materials without having a major impact on readiness and response.